Hi everyone. Let us continue with your the same chapter, that's history. In the previous class, we have discussed up till Indian nationalism, right? Page 130. Today, let us see the next topic, that is economic change. The most striking economic change during the British period came in the land revenue system. Underline, land revenue system. The most striking economic change. During the British rule, British officials went around surveying the countryside and fixing the land revenue. Land revenue was the most important source of income for the government, though the land revenue arrangements made by the British differed in different parts of the country. Land revenue was fixed at very high rates, and this led to extreme hardships, frequent famines, peasants' migrations, and rebellions across the Indian subcontinent. Ah, Britishers, India, economy. I think, as I've already told you in the previous class, that these Britishers, they were so smart. They came, they stayed here at our home, at our lane. They made us work for them, and their earning source was also from us only, right? And one of the major way through which they earned through various ways, through different types of taxes, these, that, and all. But one of the major ways of their earning was the land revenue system, the taxes which they collected from land. This was the main source of earning from them for them. In fact, during this British rule, in our country, during this period of 190, 200 years, the British officials, what they used to do is that they used to go around from one place to another. You can say loiter around without any work, just to see from where how much money they can extract. Okay, and then depending upon that, they will fix the land revenue. That okay, from this particular land, this land is good. This land has got a fertile soil, blah blah blah, whatever. You'll have to give us this much amount of money from there, tax. From that, this was their work. Roam around. Wow, so nice. Britishers has ruined us, man. Seriously. When I read this British, this Indian nationalism and all, this emotion, that what you call nationalism, the feeling of patriotism, it comes up. Hmm? After all, we are Indians, right? Where am I? Yeah. Then land revenue was the most important source of income for the government. I told you already. Now this, the system of land revenue, it wasn't same for all the land. Okay, different parts of our country had got different land revenue arrangement. But however, even though it was different for different part of the country, but one thing was common, that is, it was really the land revenue which was being extracted from us, or the rate at which it was fixed, that was very high. As a result, our people had to suffer. They had to go through different sufferings such as, many a times, famine. What is famine? Anybody? I'll ask these questions in your homework assignment. No food, shortage of food, peasants migration. Peasants means farmers. Okay, now because of the, now for example, today this area, some farmers, they are farming. Now the Britishers, they came and they have imposed high taxes. Now this poor peasants, poor farmers, whatever production they do, after being produced, and if the entire thing of the production that they have done, if all the earning they have to pay in the form of land revenue, in the form of tax, how will they survive? What is the use of their work? So as a result, most of the peasants, they had to migrate, they had to move from one place to another, and which in turn, many a times, people were rebellious. They went against this British rule and all, because of such type of policies, and which was very much needed. Now by this I remembered one thing. Yeah, there's a saying, if somebody does wrong to you, and if you just bear it quietly, silently, it is actually not the fault of that person who is doing wrong to you. It is your fault. You are allowing that person, that come, keep on doing wrong upon me, and I'll bow my head down. You must raise your voice. Now raise your voice all does not mean that you have to be violent or physical. Like, see, we know about father of the nation, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, right? MK Gandhi. He had also raised his voice against the inhuman treatment of these Britishers and all, against the wrong policies. But how? Without being violent, in a peaceful manner. So likewise, but what I mean to say is that raise your voice, but in a peaceful manner. All right. Do not let wrong happenings, or wrong things, being, it's going on in front of you, and you are just letting it happen the way as it is. No, don't do that. You must always stand against wrong, no matter whatever it is, wherever it is, but peacefully. Next paragraph. During the colonial period, the pre existing patterns of trade also underwent many changes. When British traders came to India, they bought spices, calicoes, and fine cotton cloths and sold them in England. These were usually paid for in bullion or silver. Later, many peasants were forced to cultivate opium, which the British sent to China in lieu of tea. Wow. Another thing. Now, during the British rule, what happened? Before the Britishers came in, we had trade, right? Before them also. It's not that after they came, it was they who helped us, or who introduced us to trade or business. No, we knew trade, we knew business from long back. But the system which we had before they coming in, even that went changes. Okay, that underwent changes after they came in. When the British traders, they came to India, when this British businessmen, what did they do? They used to buy our spices, cotton cloths, and everything, like all those things. But one thing which is, we may get it in an elaborate way in the next topic, or maybe in your higher classes. They used to buy things from us at a very cheap rate, and this very same thing they will take back to their places, that's in England, and they will sell it there at a high rate, okay, at a high price. Now, when they used to buy, they how in what form they used to pay us money? These were usually paid for in bullion or silver. Okay, this was underlined that it was paid in the form of bullion or silver. Now later on, many farmers, in fact, these Britishers, when they started ruling us, they started forcing many of our farmers to cultivate those crops which they need, and not those crops which we need for survival. Like example, it's mentioned here. They used to force our farmers to cultivate opium, which we were not in need. They were in need of those opium. Why? Because they will take this opium from us and they will exchange it with China. In return, they used to take tea from China. And do you think they will take the tea and bring it back to us? No. England. How nice it is. They will take opium from us. They will take that opium from us. They will go to China, give our opium, take the tea from China, and in return they should bring here, no, from China, England. Where are we, man? What do we get? Next, when India became a full-fledged colony, she exported raw materials like jute and cotton to England, which fed British factories in Scotland and Manchester. These finished goods were then sold back to India at much higher prices than those at which raw materials were bought from India. Overall, trade which was in favor of India at the beginning of the period became very unfavorable for the country. Another thing. Now, when we were completely under the control of Britishers, what did they do? They used to take our raw materials such as jute, cotton, and all. They will take our raw materials. Where they will take? They will take back to their home, to their headquarters, like England, so that they have their factories. Now, see, just having a factory is not sufficient. You must also have that raw material. Otherwise, you may have big machines, you may set up factories, but what is the use of those machines and factories if you don't have the raw materials for production? So they will take our raw materials, they will produce there in their factories, raw materials from us at a cheap rate. They will produce the things, and after production, somewhere it has to be sold. They will again bring back to us only, and then they will sell those things at a high price. Supposingly, say this pencil, wood, lead, they will take from us this pencil and wood, this lead and wood at 1 rupee. They will produce it out there and they will bring back and sell it as here 10 rupees. That was their policy. So ultimately, what happened because of this thing? Earlier, trade business was something that was very much favorable for our country, but because of these things, okay, this process, taking raw materials from us at a cheap rate and selling the finished goods at a high rate, business did not remain any more favorable for us. It became very much unfavorable for the country. So these are all the economic changes, huh? Because everywhere economy, money, our power, economically we are being hampered. Next para. Another striking change was the destruction of traditional industries such as weaving, pottery, iron smelting, brass works, etc. They were destroyed since they often posed a challenge to British trade and manufacturing. This phenomenon came to be known as deindustrialization. I'll explain you, just underline deindustrialization. Gradually, the industrialization of India began in the later half of the 19th century following a slew of efforts made by the likes of J.R.D. Tata and others. The main founder of this Tata Group of Industries, J.R.D. Tata, Jamshedji Yashwanji, I forgot the abbreviation. J for Jamshedji, Yashwanji, Dhirubhai, something like that, okay? Just see. One of the prominent industrialists of our country. Alright, let me start from the beginning this para. I'll come back to J.R.D. Tata. So another thing was what happened, this Britishers, they started destroying our traditional industries, weaving, making cloths. We have out here in Assam, what is that place which is very famous for this Assamese tradition, Mekla Chador and all? Swalkuchi, yeah. But see, yeah, like I'll give you this example so that you can understand in a much more better way. If you ever tend to have, if you ever go visit there, or if you have any relatives, just ask them how is that same industry, handicraft industry, you can say, weaving of those attires, traditional cloth, how it was way back 30-40 years ago, or 10-20, you don't have to go so far, just go 10-20 years ago, and how it is right now. The machines, the industries, machine industries, large scale industries, how it is affecting the small scale or handicraft industries. The same thing the Britishers did for us as well. Because of them, all our traditional industries such as weaving, that making of cloths, pottery, there's this what you call making things made of like artisans, okay, you can say pottery, iron smelting, brass, all these are small traditional industries. These were affected. It destroyed. The Britishers destroyed. Why? The reason, because they knew that these things will be a challenge for the British trade, for the British business, and for the British manufacturing. Because definitely, everybody, you, me, what do we want? We always want the good and the best. So when we go for buying any particular thing, we always see for the best, right? And these products, this what do you call traditional industries, the products that they used to make, it was a challenge. It was a threatening for this British industries, as because they knew that if this traditional industry survive, consumers will ultimately go and buy these things. Consumers, people, those who buy, and they will not buy our product. So when they won't buy our product, we will be at loss. Now, how to make people buy our product? Now, for example, today, yeah, we all wear pant, shirt, and all, shorts and all, right? Imagine in the market there is no pants, no shorts, only dhotis, lungis. What will you do? How long, how many days, how many months will you wear the same pant, the same shirt, or the same shorts that you have? A month, 6 months, a year, 2 year, and then a day will come, because this it has got its own lifespan. Even though we like it or not, we want it or not, we will have to go and buy it, because there is no other choice, because that is the only available thing in the market. Same thing the Britishers did when they started shutting down these traditional industries. Ultimately, we people, we were in a way forced, compelled to buy their products, which in turn was beneficial for their business. So this was another thing what the Britishers did. And this entire process of shutting down our traditional industries, okay, is known as deindustrialization. So basically, India was being getting transformed into a deindustrialized country. But gradually, when the industrialization began in the later half of the 19th century, later half means also 19th century. Which period is called 19th century? 1801 to 1900. Century, 100 years, 1801 to 1900 is called 19th century. So later half, that means if you divide into two half, that is 1801 to 1850 is first half, second half is 1851 to 1900. So later half, that means in between 1851 to 1900. Okay, that is the process, that is called later half. Then the later half of the 19th century, when industrialization began in our country, then some of the efforts made by some of our industrialists, okay, such as J.R.D. Tata and others, the names are not being mentioned, but there were many. I don't remember right now at this moment, but there were some of them. So J.R.D. Tata, and who was it? I forgot. Well, yeah, if it comes in my mind, I'll let you know. So there were some prominent businessmen because of whom our Indian industrialization again started setting up its process. It took time, but gradually it started coming up. Next, we have the cultural changes, economic changes we are done, cultural, social. Cultural changes, we will do it in the next class. All right, that's this topic for the day. See, as I tell you all the time, that the main focus, the main intention is not to hurry and finish up the chapter. It's mainly to understand, so that you understand each and every word, each and every. Why are you studying? What is the main intention behind this? Your concept must be clear. Just for the sake of memorizing, mugging it up without understanding why am I studying this, no use. You will score mark, but that marks is of no use. Right after the examination, you'll forget what you have studied. What will you do with that mark, man? You're not going to carry your mark sheet everywhere, wherever you go. You're not going to carry your mark sheet, hang it around in your neck, and go to a vegetable vendor and see, this is my mark, give me 1 kg of potato, 1 kg of onion. No. It remains out here, inside. Correct? So study in such a manner that it is being imprinted, tattoo, forever, imprinted. It's being inked out here. It's not temporary, make it permanent. Remaining we will discuss in the next class. Please study well.